back to the Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
You caught me mid-Celsius at 10:21 p.m. trying to make sure I stay awake for our recording of this episode.
Ben was like, I just called him and I hit record. He didn't even know this was happening. Did you know this is a podcast? You thought I was just calling to talk.
I thought we were just all talk doing it.
Work. No, we're talking Commander Masters as the Masters of Modern podcast. Often people are like, hey, I thought you were a modern podcast. Modern is the name, but fun fact, Masters is also the name, and so a Master set has been released. Our namesake. This was Commander focused. There's a lot of controversy around the set that we'll get into a little bit, but more importantly, there's a bunch of new cards from the Commander decks that are alongside it. There's a bunch of reprints that are very exciting, and the as of the recording, the last of the 4 decks were previewed, and we're very excited.
Would you say that, in your opinion, this is the highest profile Master set you can remember?
Yes,
I think so too.
Okay, so I think Modern Masters 1 and 2, I think, are higher profile. I think this is third place after those first two. Those first two are so iconic in what they did, and the fact that they were like attached to the 2 largest Grand Prix of all time. The fact that Modern Masters 1 was the first of these to ever exist. Modern Masters 2 was the follow up to that, and is the largest. I believe the largest Grand Prix of all time is Modern Masters 2. I do think make them bigger than this one, but. Other than those two, I think this is a bigger deal than Eternal Masters, which would be maybe my third place, because that was the first sidestep. I think it's bigger than Ultimate Masters, which is the last Masters set, which is the precursor to the $300 draft booster box. It's the first one to kind of be that in the Master line, and I definitely think this is bigger than either of the double Master sets.
Yeah, I think the reason I think that this is the biggest one was 2 reasons. I agree with you that the first 2 Modern Master sets. I was thinking about it when I asked you the question, and I think your answer is kind of correct. Those first 2 Modern Master sets at the time, they were huge, massive. This one is so big because it feels expensive and heavy with cash in terms of what's in the set and the perceived value, combined with the fact now that the Commander decks have become such a big piece of Magic's new set releases, like they're such a huge deal. The 4 Commander decks, I feel like on some level, are actually more high profile than what else is in the set. Like there are some very good reprints. We're going to get into it when we talk about the set, like just some of our favorites. But the Commander decks are astonishingly powerful. Like the Eldrazi one in particular, I think we'll talk about as a highlight, because there are a few cards in the Eldrazi deck that are just like off the charts. But each one of the Commander decks has a few really good cards that are just like, these are enormously powerful. I'm sure this is going to be a hard to get card. I'm sure people are going to want this card. And that's something that I don't think that those first sets had because they were pure reprints. So I think the history you're talking about is really significant. And I would argue that there was more controversy surrounding the set to the point that like some people are just like almost boycotting it, right? Like there are some pretty negative opinions out there about it because of the price. But I feel like this is the most significant Master set ever because of the fact that undeniably, the conversation over this week was like, these cards are nuts. These cards are nuts. I want to own these crazy cards, right? Like, we should buy collector boosters because you get all these insane versions of all these insane cards. Like, Modern Masters 1 doesn't have portrait foil versions of Ulamog and like...
Well, but I guess 2 things. Like, the first the first Modern Masters, like, had a serious depth of power level reprints. Now, a lot of those over time have been outclassed, right? I mean, the joke is that Tarmogoyf now is is significantly less played in Modern, and therefore its value is less than what it was when it was like a controversial first pick in the top 8 right. of the second Grand Prix finals. Because that's true now, that wasn't true at the time. Like one of the things that like they talked about is that Commander Masters, I'm gonna mess that up a lot on this episode. Modern Masters 1 was because it's something that happens a lot when Wizards print sets, right? They come out with a set and it's like, this is the first time we've ever done it. So every good idea we have is in it because we don't know if there's going to be a sequel. This is the idea. Conspiracy 1 was a similar example of this. So then the follow-up set, they're like, oh wait, this was a good idea. We have to if we're going to do like 6 more of these, we have to spread out the next 6 to make sure we like have enough good ideas to keep this going. And so Conspiracy 1, like packed filled with every good draft matters idea they could come up with. Conspiracy 2, oh, we used all of our good ideas in the last one. Not all of them, but like, okay, let's spin off that. Did we have enough depth? Is there that much depth to draft matters? And I think they could do a better, I would be very excited for a like Commander Legends conspiracy set where they take like the multiplayer format of it and involve it. I think that would be very cool. Or like commanders that are draft masters. But I think that when it comes to Modern Masters 1, that was kind of that, right? They're like, oh, this is the first master set. We're going to print every iconic modern card, every iconic, like all of the commander cards within the period of time that we're reprinting that like desperately have needed a reprint in a long time. And every pack is foil. So you're going to have like, not to mention the uncommons, like a foil uncommon, Aether Vial is a thing that you can just open in the set, and you're gonna have to choose between that and a Tarmogoyf in a pack, right? Like that's, and then later ones are like, oh, a lot of the really valuable reprints are at Mythic in Modern Horizons or Modern Masters 2. And that was one of the reasons that they stopped making Master Set, right? They like got through a bunch of them and they're like, wait, there's kind of diminishing returns. Eventually they got to Iconic Masters, which was like kind of the last of that era. And then Ultimate Masters came out. And they were like, you know what? We're done making master sets. This is going to be the last one. Originally, this was going to be Graveyard Masters, but because this is going to be the last one, let's just go full bar. We'll raise the retail so we can put every cool card that we think deserves to be in the set into the set, and make it the most exciting and most powerful set we can. And that was massively successful. They then follow with some Horizon sets that they threw in and those type of concept sets. But then Double Masters was like, okay, take the Ultimate Masters model, and then let's continue it. We're just like, how cool and powerful cards can we put in this that people are going to be really excited about for? So every pack you open, you're excited about. If you open a box, you're going to be excited on the whole by the holistic experience of opening that box, though it might cost more to do it. And I think Commander Masters is following that same model with the added spin of Booster Fun era, right? Like this is the second one to ever come out, the second master set ever in the Booster Fun era, and that adds so many extra layers of cool treatments and cool foiling processes and cool throwback cards, and which I do think does add a lot of excitement.
So I have a few things to say about that, and definitely many thoughts on the whole history of the Masters format. But a quick shout out. Obviously, we have been around doing this show for 10 years, which is insane to say. So a big thank you to the patrons who have supported the show for years. A big pinkies up to the Nobles of House Modern. Thank you guys so much for being with us here. It's awesome. To any of the folks that have worked with us over the years to make this show happen, we thank you guys so much. And then finally, Alex and I are both a part of the Magic Ambassador program, and we got to receive the product pretty recently, but a little bit early. So we were able to open the packs and kind of understand the set and see it. And we have a lot of fun thoughts about it. You mentioned all the cool foilings and all the cool versions of the cards. And I kind of want to gush about some of that because I definitely feel like I am pretty hyped. I have like all my cool stuff on the left over here I haven't put away yet. And I have like all of the commons in the box on the right. I kind of just think it's all awesome. I haven't really decided like what to do with it because I like the cards in the set so much. So those are my quick shout outs. Any shout outs from you, Alex, before I get into my thoughts?
Yep. Big shout out, obviously, to the Ambassador program. I actually haven't opened any of the pack. I opened some the collector boosters we got, and then I opened the Commander decks, and that's been the thing I've like spent this last week, like every single day, every single one was previewed on each single day, and like nail biting every single time, wanting to talk about it. Of course, they saved the Eldrazi one, which I think is the best one for last. Which is the one I wanted to talk about the most. And then today I've had a headache all day. So this is the first time I felt good enough to talk about anything about Magic, and we're doing it on this episode. So super hyped. And yeah, thank you, Wizards. We're super excited to be a part of the Ambassador program and just keep talking about cool Magic stuff.
I got home. If you follow me on social, you guys saw this. I came back from Atlanta where I was doing one of the trade shows for the toy company that we do together. And my flights were very heavily delayed. And I had played a show. Some of you guys know I play music at the Hard Rock Cafe while I was there, which was really fun the night before. So it was kind of a long night and I was very tired and my flight was delayed by like 6 or almost 7 hours. So I landed at midnight at LAX on Saturday. I got home. It was 1 a.m. I was like delirious walking to my front step. and my box of my Commander Master stuff was waiting for me. And I like looked at it and I was like, oh, is that what that is? And I like opened it and I was like, there's so much stuff here. I'm so tired. I was like, but I can't resist opening this product. And I like sat down at this desk and I was like, I'll start and I'll open like a couple packs. And I sat here for 2 hours at certain times, like almost like nodding off, like I must finish. And I just ripped open everything, like every pack. Ridiculous. So much fun, as fun of a pack opening experience and the decks and all that as I've ever had my whole life. So definitely very excited. So getting back to your point there about your thoughts on master sets and the differences, and I think with this set, what really like comes to mind for me is, every Magic set, Wizards has like been very clear. Like anytime they're ever asked about it, the company line is always, we print Magic cards for retail releases, right? The whole conversation surrounding secondary market is essentially just not talked about or acknowledged. It's not part of the conversation. And this set, if you're buying it as a fan, is very exciting because there's a lot of iconic cards in the set. There's a lot of very exciting stuff in the set that is like very playable cards that I specifically want in my Commander decks. And I think what's interesting about that is that in terms of standard sets, if you open a standard set, right? Like if we open any set that comes out, those cards don't exist anyway. Like standard cards primarily are brand new. And there's always a balance on those sets that bring them to whatever the retail price of a set is, right? Like it's whatever it is. I honestly can't remember right off the bat.
It's still ballpark $100, right? Like a standard set or draft booster box is around $100.
So like there's a balance naturally. And every standard set has a few cool reprints, right? Like that's part of the deal. Like there's always a few things. But the cost at retail tends to kind of be consistent, which is why when I look at this set, and there was a lot of conversation in the weeks leading up to this that were like the price at retail of this is higher than most. I opened these packs and my feeling when I was looking at them was like, this looks like this costs at retail about what I'm paying. Like I really felt like what I was opening overall was like very exciting. And also the same with the precons. The number of cards in the precons that I like put directly into my Commander decks that I was missing slots of, cards I didn't really particularly want to buy before, made me feel like this set is an exciting marquee set. Like it is actually truly. And the thing you mentioned a second ago about different versions of cards, all of like the cool different variants and printings, what it really made me think about was my biggest issue with March of the Machine was that it was this really amazing set that had all these really iconic characters in Magic lore and amazing looking legends, and specifically those Commander legends, the ones that are, what the hell are they called?
I'm so bad at I like still call Expeditions treasures. I'm terrible at remembering what the name. But yeah, the mystical archive slot for
okay.
March of Machines.
So the special version of Commander, like the Legends cards that showed up in March of the Machine, the foil treatment on the Halo foils, amazing. The etched foil, incredible. Like there were so many cool versions of so many cards I loved, and some of the ones that come to mind for me were like Baral, amazing. Like what's it called? Emery, amazing, right? These cards that were like, for me, kind of iconic, like I've played a lot, and I would open like an amazing foil version, and I would go look it up later to see like if I was going to buy it on a website, and it would be like, oh, this was like included in the cost of my pack. Surprising. Like I looked at this and this felt like I had opened this crazy thing, and that was kind of a function of providing a tremendous number of iconic cards and cool versions in a standard draft booster version. Because you could open those in every draft booster. So every FNM that I went and drafted, I would get a handful of those and I would bring them home. So I have like a box of these cool looking cards. The difference between that experience and what's in this set is drastic, because this is a master set, which is really truly to me where the difference lies in the perception as a consumer of that set versus this set. This is not supposed to be your every cool card and every cool version I want, I'm going to buy at my local shop for just the standard draft booster pack. Like that isn't what this set is, which is kind of why when I look at these special versions of cards that I've always wanted to own, I feel like to me, the set works in that way. It doesn't feel like it misses. Whereas I think that aspect of March of the Machine succeeded because I like the cards, but missed in the way that I didn't know what to do with them. It kind of devalued the like special quality of that printing. I didn't know what to do with it afterwards. I was like, I feel like I put this in a commons box. I don't really know what to do with the card. It's cool, but I have this in a deck already. So what do I do with it? You know?
Yeah, I think like, and I haven't played limited with the set yet, so that obviously will modify thoughts there. But I think historically these type of master sets, in the same way that Cube is my favorite way of playing limited, right? Like it's always sad because like the Cube will come out on Arena during like the Christmas season or whatever it's on, and I'll like be drafting whatever. Like I was playing a ton of Brothers War right before that came out, and then the Cube came out during the holiday break. And I played a bunch of that, and I loved it. And then the Cube ended, and we've been back to Brothers War. I was like, oh, I don't want to play this ever again because I, as a modern player, as a commander, as a Magic player, I like playing with cool, powerful spells. And the moment that like you like got regulated back to like, oh, a 2-1 for 2 is an important thing I need to be keeping out and track of. It was the moment I like was like, oh yeah, I wish I could go back to like trying to draft Storm or draft Eldrazi or
For the
draft,
record, a 2-1 for 2 is like my favorite thing that's ever happened, especially when it's flying. That really does it for me.
It is like the big difference between, and I like love limited. Like I'm not saying I don't like limited, but like the moment I get a taste of like powerful limited with good cards versus like draft chaff is the moment I'm like, maybe I just want to do this. So that's the benefit of these types of sets, right? The negative, it is a really high retail. It's a Buddhist sand painting in some ways, right? Like my favorite draft format of all time is Commander Masters 1. I've only drafted it 4 times ever, and that was because it was very expensive to do so and a extremely limited print run. The most limited of all of these. It really, like, the only reason it probably has the heavy printing is because it was a Grand Prix event.
I believe he means Modern Masters 1, guys. I think
he said that is what I meant. I don't know what I said, but there's too many words. They're all Modern Masters, Masters of Modern. That's what it is, really. But yeah, no, I mean, and I don't want to belabor this issue too much. I want to get into kind of like some of the cool cards from the Commander sets, and often in these types of sets, we also talk like, would we want to see this added in Modern, which I think is interesting. I do want to quickly, what are your, for the Commander decks or this, what do you think in general are your biggest misses? I have 2 big flavor misses. And specifically with the Eldrazi deck, though it's definitely my favorite, and they have nothing it has nothing to do with whether or not you'll love this set or not. But my 2 big misses. One,
I mean, I think from the perspective, so we anybody who has ever listened to our show knows I am not a flavor guy, though I have become more of one. I've learned more from Alex. I appreciate it way more. It's fun for me because I like the story. But historically, I follow like the cards that I think should have been in decks, kind of a thing. So when I paid attention, the biggest one that everyone's shouting about is in the Slivers deck, and I think this one is kind of egregious. Actually, Sliver Hive was not a reprinted land. That's crazy.
Though it does have every other like typo land, right? All of the like Cavern of Soul variants, other than Cavern of Soul itself. All of the uncommon ones that just which creature
claim territory and secluded courtyard.
The Commander one,
if you look at like the person who, let's say it's like a group of 5 people who are like Magic experts, and they're sitting around, they're like, sort of, how do you construct this deck based on Magic reprints that are commonly available versus ones that have been reprinted less or more versus ones that were originally at rare versus uncommon, etc. Like we're gonna average this together to be like, okay, these are cards that I have in my binder versus ones that like I don't because they just haven't been around as much. The reality is, if you go and you add a bunch of lands, like really good lands, like we're talking fast lands, fetches, shocks, those are cards that have not seen as many reprintings, and they're harder to find. They're a little more scarce. If you balance the deck around those things, it becomes very hard to do the same thing with the cards that are supposed to be the marquees of the deck, which are cool slivers that haven't seen as many printings, right? There are a bunch of them that have seen a kind of seldom reprints. So for me, when I looked at the mana base in the deck, I was kind of like, yeah, like some of these tap lands are definitely a little bit more commonly available. We've seen them more recently. But I liked some of the slivers in the deck, honestly. Like the new ones were very cool. Some of the very like Synapse Sliver is a really cool card that has not been available for a long time. There was like very cool art on the M15 ones, those weird human looking slivers from back then.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite flavor wins, and then it's in this deck, right? Is that I am, and I took made a video about this on TikTok, and then all of the M14 and M15 Predator sliver apologists started showing up. I'm expecting to be in the comments of this video, but honestly, I think and I think that's like an underrated feature of this deck, and something that like if you had a chance to grab copies of, I think would be really worth it. Is that all of the M15 and M14 slivers, which I think it prints most of them into this deck, are printed into this deck with classic sliver vibes. And this, so okay, I was going to message this, but then it was like during that whole day when this was being previewed. I think that Slivers is Magic the Gathering's most iconic exclusive creature type. I think that like if you ask anyone that once played Magic or is adjacent to it, and you were to name like 4 creature types that Magic invented, right? Not like dragons or goblins or elves. Right?
I know what you're saying. It's not in Lord of the Rings. It's not going to show up in some other printing. It's not like in Warhammer.
Like Core is another Magic example, or Phyrexians, right? I think Slivers are it. I think and part of it is just like the weird era of the 90s, and how they stuck around. But I think like they're like an iconic looking thing. They do something iconic. If you showed someone a sliver, like, yes, you might not be able to know which sliver it is because they all look kind of sliver, but you know it's a sliver, right? Versus the Predator things, which I just like, that's just like another weird humanoid race.
If you ask someone who played Magic back in the day, this happens a lot, right? Like we've been doing this forever. So if you find someone who's somewhere between the age of like 30 and 40 and they're like, I used to play Magic, and you're like, when did you play? Right? Like it's always like the same era, but like it's consistent. You're like, did you play with this dumb Ice Age? Of course you didn't. That's a bad set. And like the early stuff is rarer because people didn't play and revised as much. And once you get into Urza's block, certainly there are some, but for whatever weird reason, if you're like, do you remember Sliver Queen? They're always like, oh yeah, totally. I remember slivers. Like slivers, I had lots of slivers. Like it was that thing from that era.
And I think it's a generational thing. Like I don't even know. I think I think every generation of Magic player, all of the eras, has a moment where Slivers was a moment, right?
Yeah,
and it's always super popular for newer players, like just good enough that like classic like players that actively like the game or like our long-term players get into it. People that are being Sliver, like so it's like almost always every time Slivers comes back, it creates a new generation of, oh yeah, remember back in the day Slivers? Like there are people that their Slivers era was Time Spiral block. There are people that their Sliver era was M15 and M14. There are people whose Sliver era was Onslaught block, Tempest block, and now Modern Horizons too, and now this deck, and I think that like is because they're wavy, because they're not in every set, but they come back like every 5 years or so. It means that as long as it's not the moment they're in print, it's now someone's back in the day.
Yeah, I think with the Slivers deck, I think your point is really sound. That's like a really fun point. I think I have a lot of memories of Slivers when I was growing up, and I have a second set of them from the Time Store block where like I remember Gemhide Sliver, and I remember the ones from Planar Chaos, and it's a favorite for sure. It's a very sort of visual creature type in description, right? The idea of sliver, there's a cool idea sort of, right, of like sliding under the skin, like all these things that slide in and create this like horrible monstrosity that kills you. I think it's a very fun idea, but I do think that
the other thing that I think is cool with Slivers is that they are kind of a celebration of Magic in a way that no other creature type does, because, and especially now how they're using them, they always like revisiting Slivers in moments of like, let's revisit let's go to a place that has them like Modern Horizons, where they're like, oh, we could revisit any mechanic. Time Spiral, same deal, right? Time Spiral and Modern Horizons are adjacently the same type of set. And so it's cool seeing in this one being like, okay, what were some of the cool mechanics from the last 6 years that we haven't revisited on a Sliver? That like, okay, what's a Sliver look like with Replicate in green? What's a Sliver look like with Amass and Afflict, the two mechanics from Amonkhet? What does an Amonkhet-Ketian Sliver look like?
Yeah.
Which is another like one of the interesting flavor thing is that there is a Sliver on Amonkhet. How did it get there? What does a Sliver look like that focuses on Goad? What is a Sliver that has the Monarch keyword attached to it? Now that Red does all this exile, all of the Slivers we got in this are like really cool, like specific evolutions of mechanics. To the extent that there's like some, I wish there were more, just because like I want the sliver that lets you tap to let you and target player draw a card, right? Like the giving the new white ability to like political your card draw. Or
I was going to say, I think it's a huge flavor win because you do get a commander set of 4 decks that get released kind of with every set, but rarely is the excitement or power level high enough that it can, because it's a master set. So it's like they're very, very cool, very sought after cards. And so I think that focusing on slivers here, very much in the same way we're going to get to some of the other ones that are in the same set here, because it's 4 very cool decks. But like, I will say, when I think about, you asked the biggest misses, Hive is the biggest miss in the slivers deck. To me, the reason is it's a mana-based card that doesn't require them to go into what we just talked about a second ago, right? Like there's all these tap lands that are like more widely available that were the mana base in the deck. It's 5 colors. Hive is a really easy card that distinctly fits into this deck and like almost nowhere else. So there's almost no reason not to. Look, for instance, you look at Vanquisher's Banner versus Coat of Arms, which is like Coat of Arms is not in this deck. I think it's one of the other misses that should be in this deck. But you know what? I like Vanquisher's Banner. That card is good. I've played that card in many decks. I don't mind that that's the version of the card that we have in the deck. And if you're going to focus on giving me really cool slivers, I would rather have cool slivers that are more exclusive and sought after than Coat of Arms. It's kind of a boring card. I play it, but it's not as exciting as a cool sliver. So like that's the area where I'm sort of like, I understand that balance. And I was just going to say that I think otherwise this sliver deck for me is a pretty huge win.
All right, so really briefly, I'm going to throw in some Magic the Gathering trivia question, Ben, and I want people listening to play from home. How many 5-color legendary slivers have ever been printed in Magic? And now I will with the caveat, the sliver that is in this set does count. The 5-color one from this set does count, but
okay.
A Rumel Biologist does not count.
Does not. Okay.
Does not
okay.
count.
So you've got the OG Sliver Queen. You've got the newest one, which is Sliver Grave Mother. So that's 2. I know you have Sliver Legion, which is the one from Future Sight. You've got Sliver Overlord, which I don't remember which one that is, but I know it exists. The first Sliver. And I think there's one more that I'm forgetting the name of. I think it's 6 total. With Sliver Grave Mother, I think it's 6.
So that are legal in, say, Commander.
I don't want, if you're asking me for like silver bordered or like Gavin Verhey cards, no dice. But if you're asking me
there are 6 official slivers, and then you missed beyond them. You missed Slivdrazi Monstrosity, which was the
Gavin card.
No. It's from the boost. It's from Mystery Boosters.
Got it.
Mystery Booster sets, but. They are Sliver Hive Lord, Sliver Legion, Sliver Overlord, Sliver Queen, and the first Sliver. So Cascade, the make a 1/1 Sliver reserve list. Search your library for a Sliver, gain control of target Sliver with Overlord. All Slivers get +1/+1 for each other Sliver on the battlefield with Legion, and then all Slivers have Indestructible with Hive Lord, which is the one in this set.
So the one that I missed was Hive Lord, which is incidentally the one that they reprinted. So what's interesting about this is that the 2 major bones of contention on like Magic Online about, not Magic Online, but like the online Magic discourse about this deck was that like the mana base was not as beautiful, shiny, untapped as they would have liked, which understandable. I get it, but a lot of that has been put into slivers, and we didn't get more 5-color slivers. But I would argue getting Hive Lord and a 5-color new one that is extremely dope as the flagship card, you have 2 in the deck. Like, there's 6 total. So you're getting a third of the cards that exist in this category in the precon.
I also think, like, there is... This isn't totally true, and when we get to the Abzan Enchantress deck, we'll mention my thoughts on that one. But for the other 3 decks, the normal layout for these types of decks is there's 2 new legends that can be, and then there's a reprint legend that can cover it. And so having a 4th one gets that a little wonky and mixes that pattern. Obviously, patterns don't matter that much. I think the 2 new legends kind of make up for that to me. I think the land, sure. I think there's maybe an argument that instead of the tri-lands, they should have been check lands, because then at least those play really well with the like semi-fetch shock mana base or fetch dual mana base,
Agreed.
battle land mana base that plays into it, I think would have been a little bit better for what the deck is trying to do. I also think like tri-lands are good though, because it's really hard to make a 5-color mana base that makes sense. I think that's, whatever, to be honest. Like the big thing, and it's like been gone over a lot this week through what's been going on. I think to me, the biggest things that are a win on this are the flavor of getting all those new ones printed in the correct like visual style.
Yeah.
All of the new ones are really amazing. Though that would have been true regardless of when this deck kind of came out in a yearly cycle. The new commanders are really great. And just kind of one of the interesting things you mentioned, like this and the other decks. It's interesting to me that all 4 of the decks in this set are kind of like Wizards' spin on the big bads of casual Magic. Like if I sit down to it, if you go to a local game store and you're like, hi, people I've never met before. This person you've never met, have 4 decks with me. One of them is a Sliver deck. One of them is an Eldrazi deck. One of them is an Enchantress deck. And one of them is a Planeswalker deck. No one will ever want to play with you. It's like a who's who of like everyone's least favorite archetypes from 20 years ago.
I've got Sithis and it's really fun. You're like, cool, I'll be nice to you and ignore you, and then I'll hate you when the game's over. Like,
yeah. It's like, oh, great. Everything you have has hexproof, is indestructible. You draw 6 cards when you play a spell. And okay, the game's over. Cool. I'm glad you took the point. And then like Eldrazi's like, oh, I just got annihilated. This feels wonderful. Or Planeswalkers, which is like, oh, how long did your turn take? How many extra turns did you take? How many triggers on Planeswalkers did you take? You've ultimated 3 of them? Cool. Like, now, mind you, I think Wizards has done an amazing job. I think every one of these decks takes these archetypes that classically maybe are that way into really fun directions. One other thing that I think with the Sliver deck, one of the reasons I think its mana base is so slow is these decks are specifically balanced. When they make the commander cycle decks that they make, they are balanced to play against each other. It's meant to have almost a board game experience if you were to buy the full set. These are meant to play against each other and have multiple games, be really fun. The problem there is that Slivers is a deck that if they gave it a good mana base that wasn't super slow, would just destroy the other 3 decks. A Eldrazi deck who's like, I'm not going to play, I'm like ramping until I get to play a 1/12 drop. Oh, you have 30 Slivers in play that all have +8/+8, first strike, vigilance, haste, draw you 3 cards, whatever. When they attack, I'm dead. You're an Enchantress deck where it's like, most of my cards aren't creatures. You're or you're a Planeswalker deck where literally none of your cards are creatures and they're attacking the Planeswalker. So I think it's a little bit of a nerf in this metagame that like, in the long run, if you're buying this deck to build it, the first thing that most players do when they buy commander decks is look at the mana base and how to upgrade it. Most commander mana bases isn't the thing to like live with for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the point of a pre-constructed deck is that everybody sort of knows that you'll play with the version of the deck you have until you want to upgrade it or build a different deck. But like the constraints on the deck you build in Magic are pretty wide. There's a lot of cards, and Commander is a format that is like very loose. Like you can definitely get away with playing a low power deck with people, especially because when you sit down, I've heard about Commander players that sandbag lands to pretend to miss land drops so that like they're not public enemy number 1 at the table, so they can like win later in games. Like it's definitely the political aspect of a 4-player game means that if you're not playing the most powerful deck, you kind of have time. Like there are tables where you'll get rolled, but I don't think having a slow mana base means you're just going to get outright rolled. The point I was going to make a second ago that was interesting to me was the Slivers, like everything makes everything else better. I like just built a Kumena Tyrant of Orazca, the blue-green Merfolk Lord from Ixalan deck, and I played it for the first time, and I was like, there's like so many Merfolk Lords, like a crazy number, where when I'm playing in 1v1 in Highlander, they're a little slow because you can't play that many of them. But in like a 4-player game where if I play 1 or 2 creatures in a turn and people aren't going to just outright kill me, it's like every other card I'm drawing makes all my other cards better. It's kind of astonishing. And I do think that over time in Magic, Slivers are the best example, but Merfolk are kind of like this. Elves are like this. Goblins and soldiers. The more times they print into the typal archetype, the more dangerous these decks get in terms of power level, to the point where it's like, this is going to be insanely good. Like you don't have to try that hard for this deck to be so good. Which is kind of fun because I think people do like the typal stuff, right?
And I think a lot of the decks in this set all are that, right? That's the kind of point of typal based decks, right? Is like one of these. standing alone isn't that good, but they all synergize so well together that the more of them I have, the better. I can play cards that synergize so well with one of these that if I have a bunch of them, they do well. And that brings us to the next deck. And that is the Planeswalker deck. And I think from a success story, there's like so many things amazing. There's like some of my favorite cards, I think, of all of these that are printed, especially the Chandra Bronosateo. I think some misses to me is, and like similar in like a flavor perspective, is that this was a perfect moment to print like Dak Faden before he died, like on during War of the Spark, like his War of the Spark self. Like Vronos is a great example. I love that Vronos is in the set. Vronos being the Planeswalker that Garrick kills in the M15 trailer, who's a Cathar on from Innistrad, is really cool. Like that's, I think I wish I saw there's a little bit more of that. I think we saw a little bit more like unvisited Planeswalkers from the past. Now, mind you, Teo is kind of that, right? We've had like 2 printings of Teo. One of them is a Magic Arena exclusive, and then Chandra is like doing the thing and is kind of the like, because of Acolyte of Flame, her and Sarkhan are kind of like the poster boy and girl for like Planeswalker tribal commanders. So I do understand like it's in her color pie for Chandra to be the one, partially because she is both mentee and mentor to a lot of Planeswalkers. So I get why she's in this. There's also maybe my favorite card in this entire set, which is Spark Shaper Visionary, which is the 2 blue human wizard 0/5 that turns Planeswalkers into birds. I think there's nothing. I don't think there's anything in my life than having cards forcibly turn Planeswalkers that aren't themselves into creatures.
I like that card a lot. I opened a couple of those, and I'm very excited about that card. The 3 Planeswalkers in the set, I really, really love. Vronos, Chandra, and Teo. I think Teo is my favorite of the 3. I like that card a lot. I think it's the upside is super, super high. Like making a 0/4 that protects you and then has that cool, you mentioned earlier, the political ability of each of us drawing. I think that's really fun. There's like a very, very cool Phoenix that gives you some cool stuff with Planeswalker abilities that I liked a lot.
You get the copy loyalty abilities when you activate them, and then choose new targets.
Yeah, it doesn't seem
it comes back when you recast Planeswalkers because it's the Phoenix.
But it seems like a very fun card. Like if you're building this deck, that's like a pretty good card that's in the deck. And then obviously the commanders, like they're very, very good. Like yeah, go ahead.
No. What I think is really interesting with the commanders is they kind of give you 2 different choices on how to build this deck. Because like if you're trying to upgrade this deck or change it, there's like this really interesting dilemma for a Jeskai Planeswalker deck, which is most good white Planeswalkers want a creature to sit and play, to pump, to jump, to leap, to put +1/+1 counters onto. But if you're playing this with Gruff or Commodore Gruff, you don't want to play with very many creatures. I mean, you have the creature tokens that he's making, but they kind of make those cards a lot worse. Versus Leori, which is the cat, the elemental cat from Ikoria.
It's like the second commander in this set, right?
Yeah, is this creature that you do want to get, like you do want to play all these white Planeswalkers. So like which Planeswalker and how you play it? Do you play like the blue-red Planeswalkers are there to like create a lot of value and gum up the board, or do you want to play like the white-based Voltron version? Kind of can put you in different directions, which I think is really cool.
I think Leori is top tier for me in this deck. I think Leori is one of my favorite cards in the whole deck. I think it's really cool. Anytime a commander deck gives us a 3-color commander that is like genuinely really good and only costs those 3 colors, I'm always excited. I mean, that's the modern player in me that wants cheap commanders, but Leori just like is very cool. Like I really like the abilities. It makes me feel like if I ever wanted to build a commander deck, no matter what the commanders were, no matter what gets printed, Leori feels like a really safe commander that'll be very fun to play. So I think that I have less to say, like sort of, I guess, on Magic history than I had about the Sliver deck because it's like so historically tied. My one question for you as kind of the expert of where you think Magic is going is this in some ways feels like kind of a last hurrah. You get like 12 or 15 Planeswalkers in the precon, which is really exciting for a new player. They get to open all these amazingly iconic characters. There's so many fun cards. Isn't like Narset in the set? Like there's all these great cards.
It's I believe it's every Narset but the blue-white one is in the deck.
Oh my god! There's like Chandra. There's all these, not the new one and the old one. I mean, there's all these cards: Jace, Balerion, like really iconic Magic cards in here.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting with Leori is like it kind of encourages you to just like build a Chandra deck, right? It's a Chandra deck splashing blue white for like maybe a few additional things, or build a Jace deck, or build a. It's like the first kind of commander that's like really like leans into that. Ironic, you can't choose the Wanderer because the Wanderer is a Planeswalker, no Planeswalker type. Their Planeswalker type is white because they're nameless, which I think is really funny. But
you need typal planeswalkers for it to work.
You have to pick it has to have like legendary planeswalker Chandra. It definitely is like a cool thing you can lean into, right? Like I think like you could just make the Chandra deck that M19 I think really really wanted you to make anyways, and now you can lean into it.
I do love the 3-mana Chandra from that deck, but from that set. But my question for you that I was sort of prefacing a second ago was, your theory was that planeswalkers are kind of going away. Like that was like your thought. Like that in the future we will not see them anymore. That Magic has kind of gotten to the end of its rope with the design of them. And my question to you here is, with this deck and all these great reprints and a planeswalker commander, a planeswalker and a planeswalker adjacent great edition commander, do you think that's still true? Does this deck make you doubt that at all?
No, I mean, obviously with March of the Machines, the whole story of March of the Machine aftermath was a ton of planeswalkers lost their spark, right? That was the whole, like, literally all that little micro set did was inform us that planeswalker sparks are gone, but legendary creatures can now travel between planes. This, if anything, shows me that that's still true. Like, this is like, okay, planeswalkers in general are going to be a much rarer thing. I think we're going to still get like one a set. I think it's going to they're not going away, but we were getting to the point where we're almost getting 5 a set, right? And now I think that's going to pull back to much closer to 1, or if any, a set, to see like how that continues. Because I think the characters that are planeswalkers still are going to matter, but I think a lot of characters you thought were planeswalkers are no longer. Like I believe the Kenrith twins, for instance, neither of them are planeswalkers. And during the Wilds of Eldraine set, it's going to be about both of them kind of ascending to different ideas of what the throne is going to be, and them fighting each other. In regards to why this deck exists, I think there's an argument that for all 4 of these decks, other than maybe the Enchantress deck, it's kind of a like, we don't plan on revisiting these concepts in a while, so we wanted to make sure that we kind of keep the IP alive, keep the idea of Eldrazi alive, keep the idea of Slivers alive, keep the idea of planeswalkers alive, because we're heavily going to be reducing their inclusion as key features of the game moving forward. Or not reducing for like, just we're not doing Eldrazi stuff anytime soon, right? When's the next, like, Emrakul stuck on a moon of Innistrad? We don't plan on going to Innistrad anytime soon. Slivers are very uniquely specific mechanic. You have to very specifically go to like be doing Slivers as the thing that you're going back to. So this is kind of like one of the few opportunities to do that. And so I think that's why this is such a big feature. This is kind of their like, these are some of the ideas we've had for planeswalkers for a while. And so we're gonna bloop them all out here as we kind of look at other places to show what we want to do.
It does. It is interesting. I'm not saying that like, green and black don't have iconic planeswalkers, but I do feel like Jeskai planeswalkers is sort of the classic feature, right? Like it feels like they're planeswalkers are more of those 3 colors than the other 2. Like it feels, I guess, historically, in my opinion, like you see more heat and synergy in those 3 colors, and it's probably because they are non-creature spells and prowess exists in those 3 colors, and so a lot of the effects and abilities are sort of driven around those 3 colors to feature you casting a non-creature spell.
I think also like just character-wise, right? They're green. Basically, there's Garruk, Vivian, and Nissa, and then and Garruk has like went for a big window of not showing up that was replaced by Vivian. Like they've never like had multiple green characters being the main character at the same time. They've kind of cycled through them. It was Garruk for a while, and then Nissa replaced him, and then Nissa left the Gatewatch. So like, let's focus on Vivian for a second. And now Nissa's not a planeswalker anymore. And with black, it's like basically Liliana, right? Like, or villains. And sure. The Liliana cards rarely have synergies with each other, or at least there's no like the more Lilianas you control. There is a Garruk synergy one, right? The 6 mana Throne of Eldraine Garruk is anytime a wolf dies, put a +1 put 1 loyalty counter on any Garruk planeswalker you control. It's black and green to get all of them. So Great for Oathbreaker.
Before we get into the next Commander decks, I think we should each do a couple of our favorite, reprints from the set. There's amazing reprints in the set. It's one of the reasons that it's so exciting to open these packs. And I was thinking we could each, just throw. I mean, do you have some that you like, or what do you think?
Sure. Yes. Okay. Let's. I think honestly, one of the funnier favorite cards I'm glad is being reprinted is Zalortha. I don't know if you know what this card is.
I don't.
It's 3 red green 7/3. Creatures you control, lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness. It has trample. It's a dinosaur. This card was first seen in this set. It's technically one of the only, I think it is the only not reprint in the entire set. And the reason for that is because this is the precursor to Godzilla King of Monsters. So for the buy a box promo for Ikoria, which was during COVID, the buy a box promo for Ikoria was Godzilla King of Monsters. It was this card in the alternate universe of the Godzilla frame, but there was no card for what it was an alternate of. So this is the first time this card has ever been printed in paper, and retroactively, this is the only not reprint in the entire set.
Like non-commander deck thing. It's like in the set and it is like a normal new card, you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. Excluding the commander cards in the commander deck that are in the actual draftable set. This is a draftable card in the draft set. It has only ever appeared as a Godzilla card as a buy a box promo. So it is the first time. We finally got on the original card for that Godzilla card.
I did not know that. I will jump in with mine really quickly. This is obvious, and anybody who has been watching us or listening to us or paying attention to Magic knows this. The free if you control your commander cycle is amazing to see back, and the alternate art so good. Like Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting SWAT, Flawless Maneuver. These cards are commander staples, and it's crazy when they got first printed a few years back that anybody would have even doubted that these cards were going to be anything other than totally sought after, because if you play commander, they're in the color for me, other than really the green one in Obscuring Haze. They're almost all just must play to me. So the alt art is really incredible in these cards, and I'm trying to get a Fierce. I have the alt art non-foil and the Deflecting SWAT, and they're just very, very cool. I'm happy to see them back. I will jump in, unless you have others. I'll just jump with like a few others that really jump out to me. Next up is Capture of Jingzu. We've not seen a reprint of Capture of Jingzu, which is the third version of the Time Warp variant, right? It's blue 3 for take an extra turn after this one. There was this weird period in the like early 2000s, I believe, where Magic decided that each of their sets they printed was going to have a Time Warp card. So like you had the original Time Warp, which is just blue 3 extra turn. And then you had Temporal Manipulation, and then you had Capture of Jingzu. They're all from different sets. They're all the same card. They're all just sorcery speed, but Capture had not been reprinted yet. So it's very fun as a long-time collector of Magic to open these packs and be able to open one of those. It's a very, very cool card that exists in the set. I think that's a very fun one. I think a huge one that just like exists out there, and any of us that are opening these packs kind of hopes to open, is Jeweled Lotus, right? Like Jeweled Lotus is a card that has only existed a little bit, and I think because it's only existed in these supplementary products, your deck is not made better, any different than like a Mox Diamond or any kind of big piece of power in your deck is right. Like it is good potentially, but it's not like you have to play Jeweled Lotus for your deck to be good, right? I would say I have 7 commander decks. Only one plays Jeweled Lotus, but it is still a very exciting card. Like it's a very fun card to open in the set. And I guess we talked about this before, but Mana Crypt, cards like that, it's that or a Jeweled Lotus, something in that 0 artifact slot that's a big sought after reprint. So it is exciting opening these packs knowing you could open one, because almost all of us have at least one deck that wants a Jeweled Lotus, right?
Yeah, I think, Jewel Lotus is always an interesting card to me because people were this is the best card ever, and then it swung, this is the worst card ever, this is bad, and then it came like, oh, actually, it's good, it's CDH play, and then CDH's like, well, it's good in CDH if you like have a commander that's 4 or more mana and only 2 colors, and so it's been this swingy card to see where it sees play. It kind of taught me that I think like of the Power 9, if we were going to unban a card, Black Lotus is the most interesting one to unban. Like I actually think I think that Black Lotus shouldn't be unbanned. But if you like, someone was like, Wizards like, you have to unban a card in Power 9 now, RC. I think it like is the safest and maybe the most interesting. And I think this Jeweled Lotus kind of shows that, right? It like is fine. It's good, but it's not the most busted thing you'd ever see. And it's definitely an exciting reprint because that card needed to be reprinted.
Yeah, I think beyond that, like the card, I mean, there's honestly, guys, if you're buying the set, there are a tremendous number of cards that if you open them, you'll be excited.
It's just pile of heater after heater, right? And even some of like the uncommons, like the fact that you can now get a foil Darksteel Mutation or a foil Song of the Dryads, the fact that, you know, you have like Arachnogenesis being reprinted, one of the best fog variants of all time, that gets to go up against Craterhoof. I'm so excited and limited to have someone cast Craterhoof Behemoth against me, and for me to cast Arachnogenesis to block it. Like, that's going to be the spiciest.
Dude, I
moment of my entire life.
literally heard this 4 days ago. Evan, my buddy who I played with last night, was like, "Did you hear about when so and so scooped?" And he was like, "Yeah, I cast Arachnogenesis when he freaking crater hoofed," and he was like so proud of himself, like that exact story. And he was like losing his mind. And I was like, I forgot that Arachno had the fog ability on it. So yeah, I'm with you. One of the things I did open in my box that was exciting for me was I got 2 foil crater hoofs. I did not own a crater hoof prior to this. So I had it in 2 decks. I had it in 2 decks, just like waiting to actually get the real card, right? Like I was not playing it yet. And so I did open them and put them in the 2 decks. Like, it's very exciting for me.
I want everyone to know that this is terrible. You know that Craterhoof Behemoth is my like least favorite way for a commander game to end. Like, by and large, by a wide margin. Like, I maybe like would be the card I would ban if I was in charge of everything.
Explain why you hate Craterhoof Behemoth so much. I don't understand.
It's so boring. It like is just the easiest thing to cheat and play on the planet. There's so many different ways to tutor it. In green, there's so many ways to put it into play for free. So it's like guaranteed every green deck on the planet can just put Craterhoof Behemoth into play if they want to at any moment. And then not only is just the game ending in the way that it ends it boring, it's boring because it involves just infinite math. Because it's not always a guarantee that you're going to win. There's a chance that you could do the combat math wrong. Someone might block incorrectly. You might block correctly. You might attack incorrectly because you have to do it with 4 people. So you have to sit there and watch Ben Bateman specifically tilt for 20 minutes as he mixes around his creatures and then looks at your creatures across the field. Like, oh, maybe if you block there, does that? Okay, so I need a third one. Oh, no, I lost count. Okay, let me recount. Okay, so it's trample damage. Let me add this all up. How much blockers do you have? And then over here, you have this other player who's like watching you do all of this, hoping that like, oh, he won't. Oh, he'll just target Alex and Michael. He won't target me, Marshall. And then Marshall's like, oh, no, wait, he is going to do lethal to me after 30 minutes of you doing all that? Oh, I have fog. Don't worry about it. I hate it. I hate the entire experience is toxic. Get rid of the card. Everyone's like, oh, the game has to end sometime. It doesn't end with Craterhoof Behemoth because math has to be done.
It's like, should be like Craterhoof Behemoth play, and like it's just like plus, and everybody loses. Yeah, or something, whatever. Anyway, so but okay, that I think that like vaguely wraps up some of our favorite reprints. What I will say about it is, I opened my packs and found just a smorgasbord of cards I was excited to own. Some that went into decks. I'd say at least half of my big chase cards that went straight into decks, and the others were just like, this is such a cool version of a card I've never owned before. There's no doubt the retail price on the set is expensive. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's not. And I totally understand if somebody listening to this is just like, that's just not for me. And look, there is going to be another Magic set that comes out in 6 weeks. Lord of the Rings was an amazing set. It just came out like a month ago. So like there's going to be an endless number of Magic sets. But if you so happen to see this set at retail and you think it's cool, I had a phenomenally exciting experience opening it, and I do recommend it. I can't say that for every Magic set. Looking back at New Capenna, I would not say that about that set. It was not my favorite. There are others.
Really? So I think New Capenna is like
underrated.
I think it's like an underrated gem.
No chance.
I guarantee you in like 5 years, there's going to be like multiple $20 mythics out of that set. There's going to be people like talking about how good some of the cards from there are. I would bet you $20 that set is an underrated staple filled gem that will be talked about years from now.
I'll lose my $20 and still poop on the set right now. I'm happy to. So
perfect. All right. All right. So we have 2 more commander decks to get through before the end of the show, and I do want to get through them. So the next set, and this is the Enchantress deck. This is Of them, this was kind of the one that I think is the most out of the box. If you're playing all four of them against each other, this is out of the box the most powerful of the four. It's just doing. It has so many Enchantress staples. Now, none of these staples are super expensive, so like there's a debate on that side. But from the perspective of just like power level out of the box, I think this is the highest. Interesting. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the tertiary commander. So in the Planeswalker deck, it's Narset, the original Narset 6-mana creature Narset. In the the Sliver deck, it's the 5-mana Sliver. Interestingly enough, when I was like making a video talking about this feature, I looked through the Enchantress deck. There is no third place commander. There's a Scythus, which is green-white, and then there's Erebos and Heliod, which are white and mono-black, and then Neely, I think. So there's no, not Neely, the Spider, the 5-mana legendary 3/5 that makes 1/2s, I think. There's 3 legendary creatures, but none of them, there's no backup commander. You were either playing with Narcy, who's amazing, and now big debate between this and the Lord of the Rings set on what's the best Saga commander, or you're playing with Anixia, which has some really cool enchantment reanimator strategy stuff that I think is fascinating. But other than that, no other commander. So my miss here is I think Doran should have been in the deck. It's a weird deep cut. A, it does need a reprint. But B, the amount of Enchantress cards that are like 0/3s or 0/2s or 1/3s or 2/4s, like that are all just like weirdly big butt, no toughness creatures. It's like I think
would the tokens have had to have been like different, like created somehow differently, not like 1/1s, like 0/2s?
I would have made them like 2/4s, like all of Nithea's tokens being 2/4s and then having Doran, or like making them 0/4s and having Doran or something like that. Maybe add like a little bit of a toughness matters theme. That does make Nithia way worse by herself. So I do think 2/4 is better than 0/4.
Sure.
But I think that would have been an interesting, because then with Doran they're 4/4s, right? Then it kind of works in a cool way. It gives them +2/+0. I think that would have been my like hot way of adding a third commander in something else. Also, maybe it just doesn't need it. Like the deck is very fun. There's some very cool cards, awesome Enchantress stuff. I'm really excited to build in Nithia.
I was gonna say, this deck to me is very powerful. I like a lot of the cards. It's the most unexciting to me, I guess, in terms of, not because the cards are cool and the reprints are great, but Enchantress to me as a strategy feels a bit more sort of out of the box. Like it's just, you buy it and like you play Enchantresses and you draw cards, and like most of the cards that are in this this precon, right? Like Enchantress's Presence, Verduran, Mesa Enchantress. There's like all the things you would expect would be in here are in there. Some of the new cards, actually, I think there is one particular card. I believe it's called Composer of Spring. It costs green 1. It's like a 1/3, I think. And it has a very cool recursive effect where you get like a land in play from your hand. But if you have like 6 enchantments, I think you get like a creature or land or something. It's like a very cool...
It's 1 and a green, Satyr Bard, 1/3 Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 6 or more enchantments, instead you may put a creature or land card from your hand on the battlefield tapped.
To me, it's the card in the set that is the most like, this is going to be a staple forever in these decks. It's going to be like a pretty sought after card. I kind of think it's going to be one of the most wanted cards in the set. I think that the commander is quite good. Like Anixia is very good, but I think in terms of it costing 2, and it's very hard to imagine that this card is not going to just be like a staple in every single commander deck ever.
Are you saying a good 2-mana creature is something that you, Ben Bateman, are interested in? That's so weird.
I love
so
this card.
By you. Also, a 1/3 is great with Doran.
I opened the commander deck, and then earlier today I was going through my box of the commons and uncommons, and I found that I had opened a borderless version of this card in one of my backs, and I lost it. I was so excited. I really love this card. It's like very high on my list of favorites. So to me, it's the one. There's a black demon too that I think is really cool.
Demon of Fate's Desire, where you can pay life instead of mana to play enchantments.
That card's really good.
Get that omniscience into play. So yeah, it's the enchant one is weird, partially because I think like, especially after the last set where sagas were already a theme, so we kind of already have a saga. Like we've had so many enchantment matter stuff this year. It feels in some ways that this could have been just in any commander set, right? Like there's some high profile reprints in this deck that are like the deck is a lot tighter than you would expect from a normal commander set, but of them, it's the one that feels the most like, oh, this could just be like, it doesn't feel the same vibe as Planeswalker, Slivers, and Eldrazi does. Like those all feel like special limited edition creatures that you don't see. We just went through like over the last 2 years multiple sets where enchantments matter. I do think some of this is just like, as Kamigawa was originally about to rotate out at the end of this summer, this is like a new place to put all those cool enchantments in. I also think like graveyard enchantments matters. There was no commander for this. I mean, part of the reason I recommended Doran is after I looked through every Abzan commander available, there isn't a good one for enchantment. I mean, you could put Carador in it, I guess, because you can like replay the creatures, but there isn't really a good one in these colors. This is like a very unique strategy that hasn't existed before. So I do think from that perspective, I'm glad. But I kind of agree with you that like, so if you had to pick, so Eldrazi, Planeswalker, and Slivers, those are the 3 commander decks that are present. And you're trying to find like a who's who of other behated / beloved, like fan favorite, but also like, a little bit pub stompy deck archetypes that's iconic, something that people would recognize. What would you pick?
Blink. I'd go blue, white, blink probably as that feels like the most traditional classic, like,
is that iconic
new player
enough, though? Like I feel like it's not like, that's like more like synergy than it is like,
I think it's synergy, but I think it's it's almost like the most classic, like, new player being like, when I play this card, it's good. I want to play this card that makes me get this card back and play. It's even better. So like, I don't think it's iconic in the same way. I guess like if I was thinking about things that feel like they're in Magic's DNA now that are not just like mechanics, because God, what will be next? I guess it's probably like,
it might be, because in some ways it stacks, right? And Enchantress in some ways is a stack. Now this isn't really doing that, so it's a little bit different. Yeah, I was trying to think earlier if I could think of anything as a fourth, and maybe there just isn't. Like maybe there's like 3 really low hanging fruit that are like obvious, and then it jumps to like the next. Like Infect is one, but they did Infect decks earlier this year.
and you can go dragons. You can go dragons, but that's another 5-color tribal deck.
I wouldn't even say that's like swinging in the other direction, right? That's like I will never be sad to sit down at a commander table where someone else's deck theme is dragons.
I got so rolled last night on like an Dragon deck with like.
I've lost to dragons many a time, but they're fun. They're like big, cool dragony things, and every single one they play does something sick, and you're like, okay, yeah, I deserve to die. Let a bunch of 6-drops at play. That's like, I hate losing no matter what.
No, he played like Soul Ring on turn 1, Tithe on turn 2, and then Dragon came down on like the next turn, and then like he just killed everybody after that. It was just like so stupid. I was like, come on, Smothering Tithe is a stupid card.
I think Enchantress might just have been the right choice. Like I'm trying to like, control seems wrong. Like also you don't want to like put like hard stacks here. You don't want like stasis the deck to like ever be printed.
I will say this though. I will say that my biggest miss in the Enchantress deck by a mile is that Smothering Tithe was not in it, because I don't think it's the fun card, but I think from the perspective of like the deck being desirable and it being on theme, and like they printed it in the set. So there's no reason if they're going to put it in the set, it shouldn't just be in the precon. And I feel like if they're going to put it in the set as a reprint, that would have been the marquee reprint in the set, in the deck. That would have been exciting. Like also it costs 4, which means that in terms of commander precons, like it's not egregious. I think the card is not fun or fair, but I also think it's totally fine. And if this deck had a Smothering Tithe in it, I think it would have been like sort of the marquee card that it was missing. To me, it's like the biggest miss in this deck is that it didn't have Smothering Tithe. I was surprised actually when I look back that, like there was a couple cards in the set that didn't get reprinted, right? Dockside's not in the set, Rystic's not in the set. There was like a few, but the fact that Tithe is in the set and it's not in the enchantment deck was like, there's just no reason for that. Like this should be in the enchantment deck.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think like it's hard because it is one of the cards that are like it's supposed to be exciting that it's in the limited packs, right? So I get why it's not in the set. I do agree that would have been cool for sure. All right, the last deck, the like arguably best one, the coolest one, the like flavorfully like as I looked through it, my like brain broke 3 times because it's the Eldrazi deck. And it's not just because of the Eldrazi, but it's like, oh, right, there's these like 4 unique colorless things that they've done. And you get a new thing for all of them. You don't just get Eldrazi, you get a skittering cicada, which is one of the like insect, colorless insects from Ikoria. You get the Archaic, who is one of the like ancient beings on Arcavos, which is the plane that Strixhaven takes place on. And then you have Amarthus, who's the commander, who is, and then Ugin's Mastery, who's a like Ugin disciple spirit Naga, who uses like Ugin's manifest magic. And so like it's this nice little like history of like, oh, these are the different 4 like colorless beings on the planet. And then of course you have these like 3 or 4 like iconic like Eldrazi spells. You have a new Eldrazi, which is, it's interesting that there's only one new actual Eldrazi, which is, well, this and the commander. Flare of Loyalties, which is the 8 colorless 8 wing ding. Whenever you cast a spell, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature until end of turn. It has base power and toughness 10/10, engage trample, annihilator 2, and haste. So fun fact, I don't know if you know this, Ben, but this card goes infinite with Kiki Jiki.
Oh, sure. Very quite good. Quite good.
Yeah. if you needed to do that.
This card is extraordinarily good. I think like this card is top of the list in terms of favorites. I think the card Rise of the Eldrazi is my personal favorite from the set, but I think that these two are tied, we'll say.
I think Rise of the Eldrazi is a perfect Magic card.
Let's talk about Rise of the Eldrazi. I like when I read it and I opened the deck, I like kind of lost it, and I think I texted you an image, and I was just sort of like, I need to like talk to people about this, but I can't.
Yeah,
this is like,
so for those who don't know, it's 9 wing ding, 1 for each Titan. Sorcery. This spell can't be countered. Destroy target permanent. Target player draws 4 cards. Take an extra turn after this one. Exile Rise of the Eldrazi. Now the thing is, that is the those are the triggered abilities of the cast abilities of each of the original 9 Titans. When you cast Emrakul, you got to take an extra turn. When you cast Ulamog, you destroy target permanent, and when you cast Kozilek, you get to draw 4 cards. So it like is just like smushing the original Eldrazi into a sorcery, and
they did the thing where they like said the name of the movie in the movie. They were like,
it joins the long run of cards that say the name of the set as the card. It's Rise of the Eldrazi. I'm so hyped.
This card blew my mind. I read it and I was like, this can't be a real thing, right? I was like texting you, like it's my favorite. I think Flare is probably close, but there's like 6 or 7. Actually, let's talk about the commanders. Both commanders are quite good. Like one costs some mana, the other one is free-ish.
Yeah. So there's the 7 mana one. That's the one in the box, right? It has Cascade. Whenever you cast a color spell that costs 7 or more mana, Cascade. It gains Cascade. I think that one's cool. It's kind of a little boring. I don't like the big Cascade type effects. Is not something that I've like ever really loved playing in Commander. The Narthis, the Ghostfire Initiate, though, the XX Spirit Naga 0/0. Enters the battlefield and X +1/+1 counters on it, and then whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on another colorless creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then when it dies, you manifest equal to the manifest the number of cards from the top of your library equal to the number of counters on it. Is like a walking ballista. What's the other one with the Thopters?
Hangerback Walker.
A walking ballista, Hangerback Walker. Commander is such a sick idea, and also Manifest is like one of my favorite mechanics of all time. Honestly, I think Manifest could be evergreen.
It's
So
random, which is what that's what's good about it, right? Like unless you control it, it's fairly random, which makes the cost of it and also the effect of it kind of random, which is why I believe there's a card called like Ugin's something. It's like a 4-mana colorless something or other that like whenever you cast a colorless spell, we'll talk about it in a second. But the point is,
Mastery. It's 4 mana enchantment. Whenever you cast a colorless creature spell, manifest the top card of your library. And then whenever you attack with a creature with power 6 or greater, you may turn a face down creature you control face up.
Yes, so the same idea. They're utilizing manifest as it relates to colorless cards, and in that case, again, it's random, right? Unless you can control the top of your library effectively, it's just a fun way for big, bulbous, clumsy, expensive colorless cards to just get you value. Like they're all exciting. This deck. To me, this deck was, and we will see when it all bears out, right? Like when like 2 or 3 months from now, what are people doing with these cards? Are they excited about having them? Or are they trading them or whatever? But to me, it was just like, oh my goodness, like these cards are crazy because correct me if I'm wrong, Kess, but Emrakul is and has been banned in Commander forever, right?
The original one has, yes.
So like that's the iconic, Eldrazi card. Past that, there's I guess like 6 or something. Like there's not that many like of the giant Titan sort of level huge thing.
Of the original of Eldrazi, there's only 6 legendary, right? This is the first time we've gone in a legendary Eldrazi that wasn't Emrakul, Kozilek, or Ulamog. And then of those, Emrakul is.
But I mean like It That Betrays, or these cards that are sort of like adjacently big, exciting. Like there's not that many gigantor 10 CMC or more ones. And so I do feel like there's a level of like opening this deck and seeing these new cards that are, expensive. There's a Wrath. I think we didn't talk about it, but it's like
Titans 4 colorless. As an additional cost to cast the spell, reveal a colorless creature card from your hand. Exile each creature and planeswalker with mana value less to the revealed card's mana value. And the other one, like, we'll just read all of them because every one of them is sick. Desecrated Reality. This one's really cool because it's like taking advantage of a mechanic in a way that's interesting. The Desecrate Reality 7 instant, but it has for each opponent exile up to 1 target permanent that player controls with an even mana value. But Desecrated Reality has Adamant, which Adamant is an ability that was basically like a do nothing from
Eldraine, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And if at least 3 colorless mana was spent to cast this spell, return a permanent card with an odd mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. The fact that it's it's using Adamant with colorless is such a cool cool use of that ability. That like I was like, okay, I see what you're doing. And then the last ones that we haven't talked about. There's a Darksteel card, Darksteel Monolith, 8 mana, indestructible. Once each turn you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost of a colorless spell. So an artifacty theme kind of come in there. And then our Abstruse Archaic, 4 mana for a creature avatar 3/4. Pay 1, tap it, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from a colorless source. What's cool about Abstruse Archaic is you can copy the triggered abilities on any of the Titans. So a lot of the Eldrazi, especially the original one, when you cast them is when you trigger the ability. Archaic lets you copy those. So you can take 2 extra turns with Emrakul, which you can't in Commander, but you can do that. What's interesting is Emrakul is the one Planeswalker, the only Titan that doesn't have a card in this. We didn't get a reprint of Emrakul, so there's the Emrakul is still locked in a moon, and that was one of my big flavor misses. By the way, the 2 flavor misses I have from this deck is do you know the idle cycle or the uncompleted idle cycle? So they're commander.
Like idle. There's like that one that you like draw a card if you make a token or something like that.
Yeah,
what's that
so
card
there's Idol of Oblivion, which is 2 for an artifact, tap, draw a card, activate this ability only if you create a token this turn, or 8 sacrifice to create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi token. There's also Ancient Stone Idol, which is 10 mana for a flash, 12/12 golem. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. It has trample. When it dies, create a 6/12 colorless construct artifact creature token with trample.
Okay.
Both of these are the depictions of the statues of the original god forms of the Eldrazi. So, like on Zendikar, each of the Eldrazi had a matching like god, Emiria, Ula and Cozy, right? Cozy's Trickster. These are like the Ula's Temple, right? Those are like the three. But then we find out that it's Ulamog, Kozilek, and Emrakul. They're depicted on the card Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. So there's 3 statues on Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. And the 2 of them are on Ancient Stone Idol and Idol of Oblivion. We still do not have the Emrakul one, the Emeria. We don't have the angel statue as an idol. And everyone was like, oh, this is it. This is the time to print that card. Didn't get printed. Still don't have the Emeria angel statue. The other one, which is also Emrakul themed, is we have, and in the comments, we're going to get people being like, oh, but Emrakul doesn't do this. So we have wastes, all of the wastes, right? The waste card type. So there are 15 wastes in the deck. And they depict specifically each of the Eldrazi we saw in Zendikar, Kozilek, and Ulamog create different types of wastes. Kozilek creates that like bismuth, looks like those like blocky structures. If you know what bismuth is, it's like a gem in the real world. And then Ulamog creates coral structures. When it like sucks the life out of the land, it's coral looking. So you have those two artwork, right? That's what the Eldrazi looks like. Emrakul does mess with the land. It turns everything into that weird tentacle red stuff that everything started turning into. Innistrad, no wastes. We don't have Emrakul waste. We don't have a waste depicting like the land. Ben like doesn't care at all. The sarcasm of like the land gooping with Emrakul's like.
I care. Why do you say that?
I want Emrakul wastes and I want the Emeria statue. I want the Emeria idol. Those are the 2 things I want. We still don't have them, and I have no idea when we're going to get them. Wizards, please. This is what the people want. This is all of this. No. Don't release another set this year. Just release 2 cards in the Secret Lair: Emeria Wastes and the Emeria Idol.
Wizards, that's what the people want. Come on, help us out. So
biggest, all of the land complaining about the slivers, all of the value complaining, nonsense. Give me Emrakul Wastes.
Give me the goodness. All right, so I think pretty much that wraps up our reviews of the 4 decks. Obviously, the Commander cards are incredible. Super fun. The reprints of the set, we talked about a bit. There's an insane number of good ones. We didn't talk about Doubling Season. We didn't talk about... honestly, I could list like 15, 25, 30. If you're buying the set, you'll be excited. It was very fun to open.
Ben was like, let's go back and forth and talk about the cards we're most excited about being in the set. I'm like, I'm pretty sure like every card in this set is in some version of exciting. We are going to be here for an entire extra hour of set. And he was like, no, we'll just do 7, pick 7. And then we fought a little bit. That's all been edited out. And that's where that segment came from. So we're going to do it in 3 minutes. And immediately it was a 10-minute segment. Lied to me.
Yeah, it was hard. It was definitely hard to avoid. So, but either way, we appreciate you guys watching, and we thank the entire Magic program for supporting us and doing this. And I'm very, very excited for you guys to hear this. So, leave your comments. Thoughts?
Yeah, just to explain, because I know we're going to get questions. What is the MTG Ambassador Program? And basically, Wizards reached out to a bunch of creators this year and wanting to kind of formalize, like previously people would get cool gift boxes and stuff like that, wanting to formalize that idea and work with them to create cool content. And so each of the ambassadors, you've seen a bunch of people announce they're in the program. On a quarterly-ish basis, we'll be releasing specific MTG Ambassador content, and this is one of those for us. Ben specifically, I believe. In regards to that, we then get cool product. We get to work with them. If we have cool ideas and want to do something, there'll be a communication point we can talk to, which has been really wonderful, right? Like historically, Wizards has kind of been this glass monolith with like you get some communication with them, but not really a direct line of communication or someone that can help with different projects you're working on. And now they've reached out to people. Now the plan is for this first year is kind of the trial run. They're figuring out how it's going to work. And then as future years go, they'll be more formalized, like how you can apply to be a part of it or how different people can join or leave. And then what that kind of is participant on. And so this has been a really cool experience to be a part of, and excited to do more content like this. And there's other we'll be doing. I have a what to do in Las Vegas video that I'll be posting soon for MagicCon Las Vegas, and then a breakdown on Vronos, the character, over on TikTok and on the mentions here. So we're really excited, and we're excited to work on cool stuff. We're still going to be ourselves. We're going to tell our honest opinions. There's nothing like that, but we're hyped. It's pretty exciting.
Essentially, they were just like, do the thing you guys already do. we would like to support you and make sure you guys have some information and access to some stuff early. And that is basically what the program is, which is like very exciting for us. And as Alex mentioned, we will continue to just be here and do the same thing. So thanks for watching and thanks for listening.
My conspiracy theory is I predicted too many things early, and so they're now giving me early information sometimes. But now you don't know.
Well, you guys
don't know if like I called it or I knew. Like there's no. I've been murdered. My shot calling has been murdered by foresight. I now know the future.
when your inclusion in the program was like being finalized, it was like, wait, but like you already called the next set. You didn't know anything. And I was like, yeah, but like I've pretend I didn't know it. And like, no, but like you were right though. Like you were totally right. Like, what are you gonna do? Come on.
Yeah. It's that's what this whole program is, to shut me down. You got me into the inside. But all kidding aside, thank you so much, everyone, and we'll look forward to making more content as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.
I'll see you guys in Barcelona and Vegas. Take care.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.